like Bill said, I presented to the exec team, and they thought it was worth sharing, so I'm here to share it. And I think that ultimately it's a pretty serious topic, so I hope you're ready to hear something totally different than Q1 success. But it's definitely, it's very close to me, and ultimately I feel it's worth sharing because before this happened, I would think about the moment of my death, and I would wonder how I would respond to the knowledge that I might actually die. And my actual response was completely different, and I felt that's worth sharing at some level. So in my 20s, I had a job where I traveled all over the world. I saw 40-plus countries, almost every state, like just a great job. But I lived in St. Louis, I flew lots of TWA flights, and every flight I would wonder, what if this plane started to go down? Like, what would I think about the knowledge that I was about to pass away, and how would I respond to that moment? And I felt like I wanted to believe that I would handle that moment with grace and calm, and that I would not be screaming my fucking lungs off on the way down, but that I'd be like, I'd approach this as almost, this was kind of a way of thinking about the choices I was making at the time. I was choosing to be away from my family and away from my friends and travel the world and do what I really wanted to do. And my thought was that if I was calm, then that would mean that I was making good choices, that I had chosen to do the right things. So essentially what happened to me is very, very briefly, I suffered 2 strokes in January of 2014, one on the 7th of January and one on the 18th. And ultimately, after the first stroke, maybe you recall this scene from Pulp Fiction where a guy jumps out of the bathroom and empties his barrel at at Samuel Jackson, and he doesn't hit them. 6 shots at point-blank range, and you can see the bullets in the background here. Like, there's this moment in this movie where they look at each other like, holy shit, we just dodged a bullet. And that is exactly how I felt. I went home from the hospital after that first stroke, and I read to my kids, and I felt like the things that you see in me now were not present, and I felt like I had dodged this major bullet. But when the second stroke hit, it was a whole different ballgame. When I woke up, I couldn't see straight. I had really bad double vision. I couldn't swallow. I couldn't talk. I couldn't sit up or walk or write or type or feel much on my right side. There was lots of numbness. On my left side was no balance or control at all. And like this slide is kind of designed by Tom, I had to really find these things out. They were not present. I did not know they were there. And ultimately, the one thing that I did have in my favor was that I could think straight. And this is very much a blessing that my cognition was intact, and I was lucky enough to not have lost my sense. But this is a big-time double-edged sword, which is that being able to recognize what I was going through made me scared shitless. I cannot explain. I was witnessing my own life as if it was outside myself and it was someone else's life. And that at the time in the hospital when I woke up, I was listening to lots of music, and Mumford & Sons is a big, one of my favorite bands. And the song Time Shell, there's a quote that I'll just read to you, which is that death is at your doorstep, and it will steal your innocence, but it cannot steal your substance. And the reason why this quote was important to me is because I had no fucking idea if this was true. Death was absolutely at my doorstep, and my innocence was totally gone, but I had no idea if my substance was gone as well. And I think that was pretty scary times, obviously. And I think it's probably worth taking a step back and saying, what is a stroke and what does a cerebellum, where my stroke occurred, what's that actually do? Because to be honest, I had no idea what these things were. So when I was able to use a computer, I went to dictionary.com, I looked up the word stroke, and there's 27 definitions for this word, but there's one that is appropriate, and there's big scary words in there like embolism, thrombosis, that honestly, I still don't know what the hell those things are, but I definitely know what loss of consciousness means. I definitely know what rupture of a blood vessel is, and I definitely know what paralysis is, and those are scary terms. And the cerebellum is kind of the smaller brain that sits beneath the big brain, and my stroke is a small part of that. Strokes, plural. And the cerebellum controls things like attention, energy conservation, mental imagery, motor control, speech, language, and lots of other things. I mean, think about, I could have lost the English language. How bizarre is that? Like that, I spent my whole life thinking the English language and saying it, and then I could lose it. The thing I think is most interesting here is the energy conservation, because this is, to me, I did not know anything about this, and it was fascinating, which is essentially what the cerebellum does is automates processes. So you think about brushing your teeth in the morning, like it requires actually a good amount of motor control and coordination, and like you're working your toothbrush around. But when you do it, you don't even think about it. Sometimes I would get to work and I wouldn't even recall if I actually had brushed my teeth or not. But so what the cerebellum is doing in those moments is it's making complex motor moves simple and easy and automatic, so you don't have to focus on them, and it conserves energy and allows you to do more in a day. So I'm starting to realize that, like, essentially, when I started the ability to actually control an iPad, which took like 5 days because I kept shaking and dropping it, or my fingers could not hit the tab, they could not hit the buttons. I went to Netflix and I watched this movie, Super 8, which if anyone has not seen Super 8, I highly recommend it. But there's a scene at the end where this 12-year-old kid faces up to this big, scary alien, and he says, I know bad things happen, but you can still live. And in the moment when I'm watching this, I'm alone in the dark in the hospital, and I just broke down weeping, sobbing alone, because I had no idea how I was going to live. Like, I couldn't imagine with all these challenges what life was going to be like for me. And this moment, to me, is the ashes with which I was going to rise out of. And ultimately, I felt like it was really important at the time. The doctors disagreed. They tried to give me all these pills for, one day the nurse shows up and puts pills on my table, and I'm asking what they are because I have no idea what they are. And one of them was a anti-anxiety medication, which I have no problem with people who take that or taking that. But for me, I really felt it was important to feel everything, that what I was going through was legit and real, and the idea of numbing these feelings to me was so foreign, and I just couldn't imagine ever overcoming this stuff if I was numbing it. So the things I was thinking about was this immense fear for my future. I couldn't fathom what life would be like now. I had huge worry about my family. Like, I play a role in my family that I like being a dad. I like my wife. I like my kids. I don't mind being a provider for them. In fact, I relish that privilege. And to potentially lose that, I didn't know what that meant for my family. And, for those of you who don't know me very well, I was an executive here for 5 years, and I had this immense dread for my career and what this could mean for me. I made my living giving presentations, and at that time, I could only say 2 or 3 words in a whisper. How was I going to get back? And it was very, very concerning. And ultimately, it led to this massive sense of frustration that was, take all the frustration I would have felt in a year before and pile that into like 5 minutes, and you can imagine what life was like. It was not easy, and I felt very caged. And this is to me, this is way, way, way more than a metaphor. This was a real feeling. This was a sense that I was being held back. I did nothing wrong. I didn't eat bad. I ran marathons. I was not an unhealthy guy. This just happened to me. I felt like I was a victim. I felt like The cage, I couldn't imagine where life was going to go. And the cage was terrifying, really, because it felt like it was permanent. And again, I'm watching Netflix. At the time, Netflix has a bunch of old movies, so I go back to The Matrix, which I've seen 1,000 times. And the scene with Spoon Boy, Neo is going to see the Oracle, and Spoon Boy is in the waiting room, and he says, "Do not try and bend the spoon. That's impossible. Instead, only try to realize the truth." And Neo says, "What truth?" And Spoon Boy says that there is no spoon. And Neo says, "There's no spoon." And Spoon Boy says, "Then you'll see that it's not the spoon that bends, it's only yourself." So, I'm sorry, I've seen this movie 1,000 times, and I cannot believe that I'm weeping over The Matrix. Like, I mean, seriously, this is how I felt, and what I'm like, Spoon Boy, who has like a 2-minute cameo in this movie, brought me to my knees. And I started to realize that the cage was totally manufactured by me and my own fears and beliefs and worries, that I could control nothing about what happened to me. I could control no outcomes for the future of my life. And I had to believe that the cage was not there, that there was no cage. And this sounds like a metaphor, but I cannot express strongly enough how I felt like I was being held back. I felt like because of what happened to me, I couldn't do what I needed to do in my life. And I will always owe a debt to Spoon Boy, because Spoon Boy helped me see that the bars of the cage were put up by me, constructed by me. Every time I thought, I can't do this, every time I thought, life sucks, every time I thought, I can't believe this happened to me, those are new bars on the cage. And it was holding me still. In the quiet moments, getting back to the TWA flight, in the quiet moments when I was alone, which was a lot of the time, in the dark, and I'm thinking about the fact that I might have a third stroke or I might die. I mean, what I was not thinking about was the amazing experiences I had in life. I was not thinking about the places I've been. I was not thinking about accomplishments of my life. I was not full of regret for the things I didn't get to do. It was not about the end result of anything. What was on my mind at the time was people. And obviously, the people I loved the most were very much there on my mind. My parents, my wife, my children, my friends, my extended family. But in this connection to my family, I don't think it's at all unique, or like, honestly, part of it is not surprising at all. Like, who wouldn't think about their family in this moment? But the thing that outright shocked me was the fact that people came out of the woodwork in a way that was shocking to me. And I can't, I grew up in one town, went away to college, transferred colleges, moved across the US 5 times, lived overseas. I've left lots of people behind over the years. And the fact that these people, some of which I hadn't spoken to in 10, 20, 30, 40 years, came out of the woodwork. Like, you can see this picture here of the blonde kid, Jonathan Mancaboni, who is I don't talk to that kid in 35 years, but he posts a picture from a camping trip when we were kids, and just says, "I'm thinking about you." Every Facebook like, every text message, it mattered. It mattered in a way that was shocking to me. I couldn't believe that these people that I had not talked to in 20, 30 years, who were not my best friends 20 years ago, were coming out of the woodwork. And I believe very much that, I could probably give a 2-hour presentation on what social media means to me, but definitely the proliferation of technology and social media made it easy for these people to reach out, and the fact that I'm facing my death broke down any psychological barriers that were there, and they just came out. And I don't think this is unique to me. I think everyone has this list of people somehow. And this is the thing that was so different than what I thought I'd be thinking about, which is essentially that I always knew that my life was about who and not what. But I didn't know that the who was a shockingly huge number of casual acquaintances that had come and gone. Like, I always thought the who was family and friends, and not like casual acquaintances. And the truth is that people broadly are what brings meaning to my life. It's not that they're the meaning of my life, but they bring meaning to my life. And in the moments when I thought I was going to pass away, it was these random people combined with the people that I loved most that kept me going. And the thing that really, really just boggled my mind was lots of these people, when I would connect to them, they became these incredibly important connections, but I had no idea that the connection even happened. Like, I know that sounds kind of, I don't know, it doesn't sound great, but the truth is I didn't realize, as I was walking through my life, the influence and the sort of connections that were being made. And so to me, I'll give you one example here that I don't want to single anyone to pop out because I'll forget 100 people, but Minoru is a guy that many people here know who worked there for years. He was an IA. I overlapped with him for maybe a year, and we never worked a project together. We never worked an account together, but we did a couple of pitches together. And Minoru sends me a text message that just says, hey, I'd never worked with anyone like you before, and I haven't worked with anyone like you since, and I remember. And it's important to understand that I never, ever talked to Minoru outside of work, ever. Like, this is not a guy who was my best friend. We'd not have beers. We'd not have long, close working relationship. We just were casual acquaintances. But this dude took time out of his day, because obviously he's a good man, but his motivations to me become secondary because the connection was made and it was real and it was surprising. And the scope of this idea to me is way beyond my own understanding. I mean, think about today. There's, 100 people in this room watching this presentation. There's people on the bus. There's people at the coffee shop. That's one day, right? Multiply that by 7 days a week, 30 days a month, a year, 45 years. And the number, the scale, the scope is, I cannot measure it. I don't know how to measure that. And that to me is, like, that was what I was thinking about when I thought I was going to die, was these people that were beyond my reach that had somehow reached back. And it meant a lot. So now when I thought about this movie again, I thought I'm starting to figure out how I'm going to live. And ultimately, it comes down to a few core ways in which I want to behave as a person. I want to be thankful. I want to realize that I did almost lose everything, and that was not at all in my control, that it was all out of my hands. I had no choice, it was just spinning, and I was stuck in the spin. I want to be grateful that I'm standing here right now, that I'm back at work, that my family and I are still close, that I see that casual connections count. I want to be accepting of myself. I think the hardest part when you go through this sort of thing is believing that, that it's okay to be the way I am, and that the things I say are more important than the way I say them. I also want to be accepting of other people, because I'm going through a hard time that no one really sees. And I want to assume that everyone else has their own fights that they're fighting that I have no visibility into at all. So I want to accept them. I want to be patient with myself, because this is not the kind of thing that you get better from. This is a thing that you learn to overcome over years of hard work. And I cannot be attached to this end game. And ultimately, most importantly, is I want to approach the world with love in my heart, like as the first thing. And these 4 things, I hope, were part of who I was before. But I want these 4 things to be the defining characteristics of the man that I am and the man that I become. And that is a sea change in the way that I see the world. And during this time, I'm getting lots of messages at the hospital, and they all counted, they all mattered. And everything from get well to we're sorry to thinking about you to all this stuff. And there was nothing, I tried not to put a value judgment on what the things were that people said, and I tried to just be grateful that they were saying something. But there was one message that stood out. And this message, I printed it out, I put it on my wall, and this was on my refrigerator for what's still there. And there was this quote from Calvin Coolidge, which I'll just read it to you, which said that nothing in this world could take the place of persistence. Talent will not. Nothing is more common than unsuccessful men with talent. Genius will not. Unrewarded genius is almost a proverb. Education will not. The world is full of educated derelicts. Persistence and determination alone are omnipotent. The slogan, "Press on," has solved and always will solve the problems of the human race. So to me, and this is a note from my brother-in-law, who, again, I was not very close to, this, in the sea of sort of applause, sorriness, and sort of get well type stuff, there was this one message that was, get the fuck up and just go. Like, there was nothing else. And this, I cannot, I'm doing a poor job of explaining how powerful it was to have someone say, just get the fuck up and go. Like, that to me was, that was the point. And this idea of pressing on is the thing that matters. Like, ultimately, it's not about attaching myself to it in some end goal or end solution. In fact, goals and outcomes, to me at this point, are fairly meaningless. The point is to keep going and to realize that you're influencing a ton of people along the way. So when I was thinking about how to end this presentation, I went to dictionary.com and I looked up the word life in the dictionary, which is such a trite concept that you'd find the meaning of life in the dictionary. But I think I kind of did. I mean, I'm surprised I did. And the word life has lots of meanings, but there's one blurb that I plucked out of the first definition, which says the power of adaptation to environment through changes originating internally. And so this idea to me has become the meaning of life, which is that adaptation is not something that happens in life, it is life. Like, if you don't adapt to what's going on, you stop living, you stop growing, you stop moving forward. And I think about the sort of chase that I want to embody. That's adaptation. I'm adapting my approach to the world because of what happened to me, because of something that originated internally. And I know that adaptation can mean overcoming the flu or evolution, but it can also mean anything. It can mean marriage, becoming a different person because your old ideas of who you were no longer apply. It can mean all kinds of things, but it is life. The idea that you can adapt to the shit that's hitting you, it's like this set me free in a way that I could not adequately express, which is that I thought before I understood this meaning that what happened to me was this unfortunate, sorry, like bummer of an event that occurred, and now I think, and this is gonna sound really spiteful, but this is coming for all of us. Like, not everyone's gonna have a stroke, but everyone's gonna lose their physical abilities somehow, and we're gonna have to press on, and we're gonna have to adapt. And so to me, the idea that this is no longer some sorrowful, unfortunate event, but that this is life, overcoming these strokes is life, that to me is profound. That idea that I'm not some singled out victim, but that I am just a guy living through his life, I feel like is powerful, and I feel like we're sharing. So ultimately, I landed on this sort of credo, I guess you could say, that I'm just gonna adapt and press on. I'm not gonna worry about outcomes. I'm not gonna worry about if my speech gets better or not. I'm not gonna worry about if my career comes back. I'm not gonna worry about my family. I can't worry about those things because the cage now is gone and I have no idea and I have no control of the outcome of these things. So to me, all I can do is adapt and press on. And that's it.
And thank you, everybody.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Welcome. It's good. We will have to find a way to. Yeah. I mean, I think we would